It began with a dream, one so vivid that kings trembled and prophets fell silent before its weight. In the dim halls of Babylon, torches flickered against golden walls as a restless monarch awoke from the nightmare of eternity. His name was Nebuchadnezzar. His dream would outlive his empire. No magician, no scholar, no priest could tell him what he had seen. The wisest men of Babylon whispered their fears. Only the gods can reveal such things. But it was not to the gods of Babylon that heaven would speak. It was to a young exile, her Hebrew slave whose name meant God is my judge. Daniel entered the royal court not as a seer seeking favor, but as a servant carrying revelation. He spoke words that would echo for millennia. There is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries. And then, before the astonished court, Daniel unveiled the dream. A colossal statue, its head of gold, its chest of silver, its belly of bronze, its legs of iron, and its feet of iron mixed with clay. Each layer was an empire, each metal a prophecy. From Babylon to Persia, from Greece to Rome and beyond, the dream mapped the rise and fall of kingdoms not yet born. But the final image was the most terrifying. A stone cut not by human hands struck the statue and shattered it to dust. Wind carried the fragments away until nothing remained but the mountain that replaced them, the eternal kingdom of God. The courtiers fell silent. The king's breath caught in awe. Daniel had not just revealed a dream. He had opened the scroll of history before it was written. Yet not all of Daniel's visions would be recorded for mortal eyes. In his final days, the prophet received messages sealed by divine command. Shut up the words and seal the book until the time of the end. What did Daniel see that he was forbidden to reveal? Why did heaven conceal part of the prophecy until the last generation? The answers lie buried within his later visions. Beasts that rise from the sea, horns that speak blasphemy, and an empire of iron reborn at the end of days. Something in Daniel's final encounter was not meant for Babylon, but for us. The night was heavy with wind. The moon hid behind clouds like an eye refusing to witness what heaven was about to unveil. Daniel lay trembling upon his bed, the city of Babylon asleep beyond his window. Then the wind began to roar, not upon the earth, but upon the great sea of time. 4 beasts rose from the depths, each unlike the other, their bodies shimmering with the terror of revelation. The first was like a lion with wings of an eagle, proud and regal. Babylon, the empire that had devoured nations and exalted itself above the stars. Daniel watched as its wings were torn off, and it was made to stand like a man, its pride broken, its glory humbled before the Most High. The second beast lunged from the sea, a bear, monstrous and devouring, its ribs dripping with blood. "Arise," the voice of heaven declared, "and devour much flesh." Persia and Media, the dual empire that would conquer the lion and stretch its dominion from the rivers of Egypt to the mountains of India. Then came the third, a leopard with 4 wings and 4 heads, swift beyond reason, cunning beyond kings. Greece, the empire of Alexander, who would conquer the known world before the age of 30, only to see his dominion shattered and divided among 4 generals. Prophecy painted history before history even dared to move. But the 4th beast, there were no words for it. Daniel could not name it, because no creature of earth could resemble its form. Iron teeth, bronze claws, eyes that burned with dominion, and a mouth that blasphemed heaven. It devoured the world and crushed all who opposed it. This was Rome, the empire of iron foretold in the king's dream. But it was more than Rome. It was the spirit of empire itself, destined to rise again in the last age. As Daniel watched, 10 horns grew from its head, 10 kings, 10 nations, and among them another horn rose, small but fierce, speaking words against the Almighty. Its eyes were human, but its heart was darkness. It was not merely a ruler, it was rebellion incarnate. Daniel's spirit shook. His face turned pale. Even the angel sent to comfort him said, "The vision belongs to the time of the end. Every empire the prophet saw has already walked the stage of history. Yet the final beast, the one that returns from the abyss crowned with power, uniting iron and clay, still waits." Daniel did not live to see its shadow stretch across the earth, but he saw enough to warn us. What once ruled in Babylon and Rome will rise again in forms far greater and more deceptive. The beasts are not myths. They are systems, reborn in every age, preparing the world for the final king. And as the vision faded, Daniel fell upon his face, trembling, whispering through tears, "My Lord, what shall be the end of these things?" Fire. That was the first thing Daniel saw, not the destructive kind that consumes, but the holy fire that purifies. It rolled like rivers of light across the heavens, illuminating a throne suspended in eternity. And upon that throne sat one whose presence defied description. His garment was white as snow, his hair like pure wool, and his throne a blaze of flame with wheels of living fire. This was not a king of men. This was the Ancient of Days. Thousands upon thousands stood before him, not mortals but heavenly hosts, radiant and silent. Before this court, every empire Daniel had seen would be judged. Books were opened, not of ink and parchment, but of memory and justice. Every act, every throne, every hidden evil of the kingdoms of men lay bare before the one who needs no witness. Daniel watched as the fourth beast, the Empire of Iron, was brought before the throne. Its arrogance, its wars, its blasphemies filled the air like smoke, and with a word it was stripped of dominion. The beast fell, not to armies or revolt, but to the decree of the eternal. The dominion of man was ending. The age of the beast was dying. Then Daniel saw something that made his heart bow in awe. Through the clouds of heaven came one like the Son of Man, approaching the Ancient of Days. No angel announced him, no herald proclaimed his name. Yet all creation knew him. Authority, glory, and an everlasting kingdom were given to him, a dominion that would never pass away. It was a mystery that Daniel could barely comprehend. A man standing before the throne of the Almighty, yet sharing in his eternal authority. The angels trembled, not in fear but in worship. Heaven and earth had met in this single figure. Who was he? The prophets after Daniel would whisper his name in riddles. Isaiah had called him Emmanuel, God with us. Zechariah spoke of the one pierced yet reigning. But Daniel saw his coming as judgment and hope, the dawn of the kingdom that would shatter all others. Still the vision darkened once more. The horn, that small blasphemous power, has continued to speak, waging war against the saints. It seemed unstoppable, permitted to prevail for a time, times, and half a time. Yet even as darkness rose, the throne burned brighter. For in that court, judgment was already set and the kingdom was already promised to the faithful. Daniel woke trembling, unable to speak. The dawn over Babylon felt different, thinner, as if eternity had pressed itself against time. He had seen beyond history, beyond empire, beyond death. But one question haunted him. When would the Son of Man take his throne on earth? The answer would come, but only after 70 weeks of mystery, exile, and revelation, a countdown written in divine mathematics. The room was dim when the angel came. Daniel had been fasting for days, his body frail, his heart heavy with the weight of what he had seen. The scrolls of Jeremiah lay open before him, the prophecy that Jerusalem's desolation would last 70 years. Yet as he prayed for his people's return, heaven prepared to reveal something far greater than the end of exile. A sudden presence filled the chamber. The air thickened with radiance, as though time itself bowed. Daniel fell to his knees, trembling. "Daniel, greatly beloved," the voice said, "I have come to give you understanding." It was Gabriel, the same messenger who would one day speak to Mary. His eyes shone with the calm of eternity, but his words carried the precision of divine arithmetic. 70 weeks are decreed for your people and your holy city, he said, to finish transgression, to make an end of sin, to bring everlasting righteousness, and to anoint the most holy. 70 weeks, not of days but of years, 490 years in total. A celestial countdown from the decree to rebuild Jerusalem to the coming of the Messiah, the Prince. Gabriel's words unfolded like starlight over centuries. From the command to restore the city would begin a span of 7 weeks and 62 weeks, a total of 69. After that, the Anointed One would appear, and then be cut off not for himself but for the redemption of many. Daniel's heart froze. The prophecy spoke of both triumph and tragedy, of a Redeemer who would come only to be rejected. Jerusalem would rise again, but its people would not yet see peace. The sanctuary would be desecrated once more. War and desolation would stretch across the ages until the final week, the last covenant, the end of the age. The angel's words were mathematical perfection wrapped in mystery. For centuries, scholars would trace the starting point, from Artaxerxes' decree to rebuild Jerusalem in 457 BC, and find that the 69 weeks led exactly to the years when Jesus of Nazareth walked the earth. The prophecy had counted the steps of God in human time. Daniel could scarcely breathe. He saw the timeline of redemption unfold, from ruin to restoration, from silence to salvation. Yet one piece remained sealed, the final week, a shadowed span still waiting in the corridors of history. The angel's tone grew solemn. He will confirm a covenant with many for 1 week. In the middle of the week, he will cause sacrifice and offering to cease. Daniel bowed his head. It was more than he could bear. The Messiah would come, be cut off, and in the end, one would rise who would defile the sanctuary, a deceiver cloaked in peace, breaking covenant and setting himself as God. The prophecy ended, but its echo never did. Each line was a thread in the tapestry of time, weaving together the cross, the resurrection, and the final judgment to come. As Gabriel departed, his last words lingered like thunder in Daniel's spirit. The vision is true, but seal it, for it belongs to the time of the end. For days Daniel lay silent, his strength gone, his soul trembling between awe and dread. The visions had burned too bright for mortal eyes. Empires, beasts, the Son of Man, the coming Messiah, all written in fire upon his mind. Yet one revelation pierced deeper than all others. Some prophecies were not for him to know. In the twilight of his years, when Babylon had fallen and Persia reigned, Daniel once again stood beside the Tigris. The wind carried the scent of distant cedar and the sound of flowing water, but suddenly the river froze in his sight, arrested by a brilliance that split the horizon. 2 angels stood upon opposite banks, and above the waters stood another, clothed in linen, radiant as lightning. Daniel's voice broke the stillness. How long shall it be till the end of these wonders? The man above the waters raised his hands toward heaven and swore by him who lives forever, "It shall be for a time, times, and half a time. When the power of the holy people has been shattered, all these things shall be finished." Then came the command that would echo through centuries. "Go your way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed until the time of the end." Daniel bowed his head, tears staining the dust. The prophet who once unveiled empires was now asked to accept mystery. The scroll of destiny was rolled shut, its seals guarded by eternity itself. Only at the appointed hour would the hidden prophecies be revealed, when knowledge increased, when nations trembled, and when faith and deception would walk side by side. He did not understand, but he obeyed. That obedience became his final prophecy, that in the end revelation is given, not to those who demand answers, but to those who trust amid silence. Centuries would pass. Babylon's ruins would fade beneath desert sands. Empires would come and go. Yet Daniel's sealed words would remain, sleeping, waiting for the generation that would see them awaken. And even now, as the world races toward chaos, scholars and believers alike whisper that we are living in the very days Daniel foresaw. The time when the seals begin to crack open, when hidden knowledge floods the earth, and when the beasts of prophecy stir once more beneath the surface of history. Daniel's eyes closed for the last time beneath the Persian sun. His body returned to dust, but his visions never died. They were buried deep within the scroll of heaven, sealed until the trembling of the last age. And if the seals are now loosening, then perhaps the voice Daniel once heard beside the river is calling again, not to kings, but to us. The words Daniel sealed began to whisper again, not from scrolls, but through history itself. Kingdoms shifted, powers rose and fell, and the shape of the old vision returned, cloaked in the symbols of a new world. Empires that once bore swords now wielded economies. Thrones became systems. The beast was learning to speak in modern tongues. In the vision, Daniel had seen iron mixed with clay, a kingdom divided, strong yet brittle. Many centuries later, the pattern emerged again. Nations united for peace, yet war lingered beneath their treaties. The world, though global and connected, remained fractured in spirit. Daniel's final empire was not built with stone or gold, but with data, currency, and control, an empire of influence that touched every mind and every heart. The prophets called it the kingdom of man, the last phase before divine intervention. It was not Babylon, Persia, Greece, or Rome, but a synthesis of them all. From Babylon it took idolatry, from Persia law and order, from Greece knowledge and philosophy, and from Rome the iron hand of authority. Together, they formed the image Daniel had once described, reborn in a digital age. Many who read Daniel's words today do not see the empire's shadow. They look for crowns and armies, yet forget that dominion can also come through persuasion, through systems, through silence. The horn that spoke great things in Daniel's dream was not only a ruler, it was an ideology, a spirit that would promise unity but demand worship. And in the midst of this rising order, another current flows, the longing of humanity for peace, for justice, for a savior. The same cry that once reached heaven from Israel's exile now echoes through the nations. Who can save us? It is this cry that the final ruler will answer, not with truth but with imitation. He will rise not as a conqueror of lands, but as a redeemer of despair, a false Messiah clothed in light. Daniel saw his shadow before time. John the Revelator would later see his face. The beast of iron was never just a kingdom, it was the culmination of rebellion. It has worn many crowns, spoken many languages, and built many altars. But in the end it will gather into one, the final empire of man before the return of the true king. And when that empire stands, its strength will seem eternal. But Daniel's vision tells another story. The iron will crumble, the clay will split, and a stone not cut by human hands will descend again, breaking the image once and for all. The prophecy is not about fear, it is about timing. For when the last empire rises, the Ancient of Days will stand once more, and the sealed words will finally be fulfilled. Daniel's last vision opened like dawn after a long night, slow, radiant, yet filled with dread. He saw the river once more, its waters gleaming with a light not of this world. The messenger stood upon the waters again, his face burning like bronze in the sun, and his words carried through ages to the final generation. Many shall run to and fro, he said, and knowledge shall increase. In Daniel's time, that promise was impossible. The world moved at the pace of sandals and scrolls. But now, in our age, when the globe spins with instant communication, when knowledge multiplies faster than we can measure, the ancient phrase resounds with terrifying precision. The seal is breaking. Prophecy was not meant to remain locked in the past. It was written for those who would see it unfold. And Daniel's words, once cryptic, now read like headlines. The mixing of nations, the unification of economies, the rise of lawless ideologies that mock faith and truth, each one a shadow of the final empire foretold. The angel had said, "None of the wicked shall understand, but the wise shall understand." The wise, those who discern the times not with fear but with faith. The true awakening Daniel foresaw was not merely technological, but spiritual. The sleepers of the last days would rise, men and women whose hearts burned with recognition, whose spirits would perceive that history was not random but orchestrated. Yet the prophecy also carried warning. There shall be a time of trouble such as never was since there was a nation. Wars, deception, persecution, the shaking of every foundation built by human hands. The faithful would be refined like gold in fire. And when the heat seems unbearable, the words of Daniel will echo again. They that be wise shall shine as the brightness of the firmament, for knowledge alone cannot save. Technology cannot redeem. The increase of information without wisdom becomes the breeding ground of pride. The same pride that toppled Babylon and defied heaven. The final age will be marked not only by progress, but by blindness, a world so enlightened it forgets the light itself. And still, within this growing darkness, Daniel's vision holds hope. The same God who revealed the end to a captive in Babylon will not abandon his people in the last hour. The sealed scroll will be opened, the mysteries will be made clear. The Son of Man, the same one Daniel saw receiving the kingdom, will return to judge the beasts of history and to claim his own. The time of the end is not the end of hope. It is the beginning of truth unveiled. For when knowledge floods the earth and men seek answers everywhere but heaven, those who listen, truly listen, will hear what Daniel once heard beside the river. Go your way, for you shall rest, and then stand in your allotted place at the end of the days. The vision was complete. The beasts had fallen, the horns were broken, and the smoke of the empires drifted into eternity like the last breath of rebellion. Daniel stood in awe before the same throne of fire he had seen before, but now its blaze was not judgment, it was restoration. The courtroom of heaven had become the coronation hall of eternity, and there he was again, the Son of Man, stepping forward through the clouds, crowned with glory. Not as the suffering servant Daniel could not yet understand, but as the King of Kings he had always awaited. All dominion, all nations, all tongues bowed before him. Every scroll, every secret, every mystery sealed in time was now open in his hand. The angel spoke once more. His voice, like many waters, the kingdom and dominion, and the greatness of the kingdoms under the whole heaven, shall be given to the saints of the Most High. His kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and all dominions shall serve and obey him. This was the end of the dream and the beginning of reality. The stone cut without hands, which struck the statue in Nebuchadnezzar's dream, had become a mountain filling the earth. The kingdoms of man had vanished, and in their place stood one eternal reign and unshakable, uncorrupted, unmarred by pride or power. Daniel fell to his knees, his frail body trembling beneath the weight of glory. He had seen history before it happened, had watched the rise and fall of tyrants who had not yet been born, had witnessed the birth of the Messiah and the final empire of deception. And now he saw what all prophets longed to see, the day when God himself would dwell among men. The fire of the throne spread across creation, but it did not burn. It healed. The ruins of the old world gleamed like gold under dawn's first light. Every exile was called home. Every tear was accounted for. The silence that began in Eden and stretched through the ages had finally ended, not with thunder, but with peace. The angel looked upon Daniel one last time. "Go your way, for you shall rest, and you shall stand in your lot at the end of the days." And with that, the vision faded, the fire, the throne, the Son of Man, until only stillness remained, but the words lingered. They echo still. Because Daniel's story did not end in Persia. It continues wherever hearts watch the horizon and whisper, "Thy kingdom come," and perhaps even now, as the world trembles under the weight of its own creations, as knowledge increases, and the old beasts learn new names, the mountain is rising once more. The kingdom that cannot be shaken is drawing near, and when it comes, every empire, every power, every voice that spoke against the Holy One will fall silent before the only word that remains,